Hey guys, excited for today's video. So I know a lot about the world of liquid handling and lab automation, but there's a whole lot more to lab automation than just the liquid handling and pipetting side of things. That's why I thought I would call in an expert. Today I'm talking with Phil Darden over at Hamilton Storage. So Hamilton Storage does all sorts of crazy things in the world of automation, like -80 freezers that can automatically pull your samples out for you, stuff like that. But Phil is a specialist in capping and decapping of samples. That's what we're talking about today and getting an overview on. I had a lot of fun talking with Phil about this. Hope that it's as fun for you to watch. Phil, what's the number one reason to automate decapping or recapping your tubes?
Yes, so the main reason why many labs want to go towards an automated decapper instead of the manual process is primarily for speed. You might not think that decapping 10 to 20 racks a day manually is going to take a really long time, but kind of in the grand scheme of things, when you think about that amount of work over, let's say, a week, you could be saving, upwards to hours of work, where your staff could be doing other things that don't require, their manual processes, things like that. So I would say for the most part, what you'd be, saving is time and, efficiency.
Aside from speed, why would you automate capping or decapping your tubes?
So yeah, aside from speed, obviously you'd move into a more automated process for the efficiency. You'd move to a more automated process for, let's even say something along the lines of lab safety. When you're sitting in a lab, maybe decapping it or capping by hand, that takes so much time, and let's not mention, arthritis is a real thing. People's hands get carpal tunnel, hunched over from hunching over the lab bench, decapping manually. All those things play a part. So not only are you saving time, being more efficient, your staff has some additional time to go do other things that they may need to do outside of the manual processes like decapping tubes. Again, that lab safety, those things are all very important.
How does automated capping even work? Is it like robot fingers or?
Yeah, so funny, robot fingers. Yeah, no, so it's not robot fingers like you may see on TV. I'm not sure really how all the other decappers on the market work, but I can speak directly to our Hamilton Lavalier decapper, and it's a row or column based decapping system where there's different heads that can either be in a 6-channel, an 8-channel, or a 12-channel head, and those different spindles have adapters attached to each one. They'll go down, they'll engage into the screw cap of each of the different tubes, and they'll screw each tube off or on, depending on what part of the process you're at. But definitely not little robot fingers, but to an extent, spindles that have adapters attached that will decap or cap the screw cap off of each tube.
When automating capping or decapping, do you have to use automation specific tubes like high density matrix or Hamilton tubes?
So, yep, that's a great segue into the next question you had. So, you do need specific tubes that will work for many of the decappers on the market. Again, I'll speak to the Hamilton Lavalier decapper, where the tubes do need to have certain requirements. First and foremost, the screw cap of the tube does need to be automation friendly. This just means, tubes can be either internal or externally threaded, but the threading on top of the tube, it has to have some indentations where the adapter bits can go in. We like to compare that to a drill bit, something like a hex or Phillips or a flathead, but it needs to be able to go in as a drill bit would do, screw out, the screw cap. And then another important feature is so that when you're screwing or when you're capping or decapping the tube, the rack also has to have some anti-rotation features so that the tube itself doesn't spin with the cap. So the rack has to be in an SBS formatted rack, either 24, 48, or 96 format. The rack does need to contain some sort of anti-rotation features, and then the tubes themselves have to have automation-friendly caps.
How much throughput do you need, Phil, before automating your capping and decapping makes sense?
Okay. When does it make sense to actually move into an automated decapping process? I would say ultimately it's up to the lab, but my advice and suggestion would be that if at any point you're expecting to increase your throughput to a point where, capping or decapping manually seems to become tedious. I would say if you're getting to the point where you're working with more than 10 racks a day or so, I would move into the automated process of capping and decapping, because you may not think, again, as I mentioned earlier, you may not think, that you're wasting so much time with a process like manually capping, decapping, but in the grand scheme, again, it takes so much time out of the day. You're wasting tech's time doing things like that, tedious work like that, where they could be, spending many more hours working on far more important things, different parts of the assays, things like that. So I would say, again, ultimately up to the lab itself. If the price point is right, if the time is right, if you have the space on the bench, if all those things are right, I would say, do it earlier than later. It's better, especially, you don't want to get further down into your workflows or your processes, and decapping becomes an afterthought, and then you have to try to figure out how to incorporate a decapper, later down the line. But
Phil, thank you for coming on and talking with me. One thing Phil and I talked about before our call that we ended up not getting to when we were talking was some of the unexpected, to me at least, benefits of automating the decapping. You can actually lose samples if you improperly cap. So if you're manually capping and you don't tighten it all the way down, you actually can get evaporation, or if something falls over, your sample can spill out. With a capping device, it's always going to torque it down to the same spot instead of just kind of like, yeah, that feels good. I thought that was pretty interesting. It was an aspect of lab life and variables that I had not thought about before. If you've got questions about the world of lab automation, put it in the comments, shoot me a message. If you've got questions about the capping and decapping aspect, Phil is on LinkedIn. So check him out, Phil Darden on LinkedIn. He loves connecting with people, loves talking, great guy. I know you hear from everybody, but like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend or coworker. Let me know what you think, what you'd like covered next. Doesn't have to be automation. I've got some other series that I'm planning on working up in the near future. Happy holidays. I will see you on the next video.